If you are a fan of the Dive Bar Rockstar podcast and would like to help support the show, there's a great way that you can do that and start a new fashion trend. We have a new merchandise page on the website which features t-shirts and hoodies that are available for sale on Amazon. Just click on merchandise in the top menu and all of the links will be there, or go directly to divebarrockstar.com/merchandise. Get started early on your Christmas shopping at divebarrockstar.com. Welcome to the Dive Bar Rockstar podcast, a show exploring the lives of music professionals of all types. Touring musicians, recording artists, songwriters, engineers, bar bands, wedding bands, and anyone making their living in the music industry. Whether you've dreamed of being a music professional or you already are one, this is the podcast for you. I'm your host, Eric Baines, and I hope that you not only find some entertainment here, but also some helpful tips, trade secrets, and ideas that will help you achieve your dreams. Well, it's 8:30 in the morning, which is pretty early for this Dive Bar Rockstar, I'm not going to lie. But I wanted to get this episode out before the end of the year. And unfortunately, my neighbor's gardener has decided to make an early start. So you might hear lawn mowing and leaf blowing in the background. So I apologize about that, but it is Los Angeles and I do live in a big city. So there's that. But at any rate, happy holidays, everybody. It's been a totally amazing year for me. I hope it's been for you. And I really appreciate everyone who's been listening to the show and riding this crazy ride with me. And also shout out to all the new listeners who have just discovered the show. I hope you're having a good time. I got some great guests lined up already for next year. I think it's going to be a great year, and I'm going to try to release more episodes. So keep a lookout for that. And if you join the mailing list, then you'll get an email every time there's a new episode. And I don't usually spam. It's like I just send out the email when the episode comes out. But also in the email, I'll do a little description and also like give you some more information and background about the guests and like how I met them usually. So you get a little extra if you're on the mailing list. So you can go to divebarrockstar.com and sign up. And I think 2023 is going to be a big year. I'm really got high hopes. I'm going to try to do some stuff from the road and some interesting new formats. You know, we'll see what happens. I've always got big dreams, but limited time. But anyway, thank you for listening, and let's keep it going. Let's keep the party rocking. My guest today is an old friend and a great guitar player. We've done many gigs together, including the History of Blues show at the House of Blues and the Mad Tea Party show at Disney's California Adventure. But he's also played with Thomasina and Berlin and Mark McGrath and a local group called Faultlines, who are friends of ours and really amazing. He's probably the most workingest guitar player I know, to tell you the truth. He's a part of the lucrative wedding band scene here in LA and also plays a ton in what's left of the bar scene. And he's a true dive bar rock star and a heck of a musician. So please enjoy my conversation with Todd McCool. Dive Bar Rockstar. So I think the last time I saw you was actually at NAMM a couple of years ago. You were playing in the lobby of the Hilton, I think, with John Flanagan and Ashley Morgan in a group called Faultlines. So are you still doing that?
I sort of am. I'm more like a guitar player for hire with that. Oh, and then every now and then, like John will like write a song based around like my guitar ideas. So we've had a couple of those. Got you. Now it's just basically like John and Ashley's thing, because I think it came down to like we were doing a lot of stuff where I had to make a choice between paid gigs and doing like Hollywood pay to play gigs. Right. And I was like, I've been down this road before and I know where it leads. And they had not. And they were like, we got to do this. And I think like initially, like they kind of like, they took offense to it. And I was just like, I promise you, it's not like a personal thing. It's just like, I've done this. Like, right. I can't, it's a waste of our time, but they wanted to do it, and they wanted to pursue all that stuff. And so I just kind of like said, okay, you guys, you do your thing. And like, you call me when you need me, and now, a few years after that whole thing, it's basically like kind of back to the way we were a long time ago, you know, but we're only doing like paid things.
Right. I listened to like, there's like 3 records up there, or 3.
Oh yeah. There's like a few EPs and like random single releases and stuff.
I'm the most fan of the middle one there. Was it Telephone Philosophies?
Oh yeah. So the first EP, I think it's called Hearts and Other Things That Break.
Right.
So that one was recorded like, John had this thing where, I don't know if he ever told you about this, but he was working under Red One. Do you remember that guy?
No.
So like in Just Dance, the Lady Gaga song, she's like, Gaga, Red One. So Red One was her producer.
Oh, gotcha.
And so I think the story goes like John was working at the Gap folding shirts and stuff. And this guy walks in and they start talking. And the guy, it turns out to be Red One. And he's like, I think maybe, and it sounds more romantic this way, is just that he was talking to John and like, oh, you're folding t-shirts and blah, blah, blah. Like what a life that is, you know? And,
right.
And John's like, well, you don't really know me. Like I'm really like the best musician you've never heard, or something, the best songwriter you've never heard, or something like that. And he's like, like I'll see about that. Right. And so he listened to some of John's stuff and he ended up hiring him as like an underwriter kind of guy.
Oh, wow.
So John had a studio over at Jim Henson Studios. And so that's where, I think that's basically where we recorded that first EP. And it was like John was engineering, which, it was and I was kind of helping engineer too, but really John did a lot. And he like literally like learned Logic, like, inside and out from that. And he like comped all the vocals and everything. And there was one night where someone had left a mandolin in the studio and we were recording the song February. And I was like, I wonder if this would sound like if a mandolin would sound cool on it. If you asked me today how a mandolin is tuned, I'd be like, I have no idea. But I just kind of like picked out some notes. And then that's how like the mandolin ended up on that song. And so it was cool. Like, that was a lot of like cut and paste on that. Right. But it was kind of fun and magical and just like in a tinkering, like, teenagers in a garage kind of way. And then we took it to another guy, really cool dude, guitar player. He mastered it. So it was self-recorded, that guy mastered it, and then so that came out. And then so Telephone Philosophies, that was produced by David Kidd. Do you know him? Yeah.
Jenny Kidd's husband.
Yeah. And so that one is heavily produced. Yeah. And it was like a lot of time spent in the studio. And I mean, obviously like David's a freaking genius. Like he's so awesome and he's so smart and he's so good with vocals, with guitar, like with all the auxiliary stuff. Like he's a programmer, sound designer. I mean, like he does it all. So that's probably why that one was so in the pocket. And then like after that is when we kind of like went our separate ways as far as an original project went. So then, the other stuff was a couple of other different producers. That's why I think like Telephone Philosophies was like the last like fully produced with the 3 of us. Right. Maybe that's why it had that kind of like
it sounds like
sense to it.
It sounds like a cohesive idea through the whole record.
Yeah. And we did like, we did the whole deal. Like we did the skeleton tracks first and then they recorded the vocals and stuff. And then I went in and recorded guitars and like, it was almost a little bit dangerous the way that David and I were working because like, he's a guitar player, I'm a guitar player. So we're both geeking out and he's like trying all these different microphone combinations. I mean, it would take us like 3 days to do one song because we were using like, okay, let's try it with this guitar, with this mic at this distance and blah, blah, blah. Right. And with these overlays and like, it was madness. But in the end, I mean, it's like sonically, it's beautiful. And like, I still get surprised when I listen to it. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. And like, oh, that's so cool the way he panned this and that. And,
And you sing on that as well?
Yeah. There's one song that I sang lead on. It was called The Long Run.
Oh, yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Great
thank you.
Song.
Thank you.
Great singing.
And the funny thing was, like, I wrote that song and I was like, here's a song. I don't know which of you wants to sing it. And they're like, you are going to sing it. And I'm like, okay. Like, that was totally not my intention. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then we ended up, that one, actually our friend Linneo engineered that one, our recording engineer or whatever on that particular song. he either had a baritone guitar sitting around, or he's like, hey, what would this sound like? You know, and I picked it up and I fell in love, you know, used the baritone guitar on there, and it was just so cool, you know? And then so I've since bought that's a word. I have an acoustic baritone, and I have a Dan Electro electric baritone.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I mean, it's just like, it's just a whole different world. Because to me, at that point in time, it was like, this is like playing another instrument, but not. You know, I don't have to really learn anything new. I just have to remember to put a capo on if I'm trying to learn a guitar song on this thing.
Yeah, that's fun though. It's like gets you out of your stuff. You know.
Yeah,
I find that like you play a lot, you start just playing the same stuff.
Absolutely,
and it's hard to like, but you switch it up, and then you're like, oh, new stuff.
Yeah, totally.
Forces and that was into a new box.
Yeah, that was the easy thing. And then, of course, during the pandemic, I was like, I really kind of took that to an extreme and like started playing like piano, which is how the Members Only Yacht Rock album got created, was because of me playing wrong chords on the piano. Like, you know, I play an E here and an A up here, and I was like, well, that sounds kind of cool, you know? And like, I just make an idea. I mean, what else did I have to do during the day? You know, and then I had a ukulele, and so I learned how to play ukulele. I learned how to play bass, which for me was not hard with the left hand, but like, you know, the right hand was. Well,
we're going to talk about that's another whole other thing. Yeah. Let's back up a little, because I wanted to say one last thing about the long run is like, the good thing about that too is that Ashley Morgan, girl singer, John Flanagan, guy singer, incredible singers.
Yeah.
But singery singers.
Yes.
And you know, two different types of singery singers in the same thing, you know, like very cool, very great. But it's nice to have a break from the singery singer part.
Right.
And just have a guy, you know, just singing a song. Yeah. You know what I mean? Not to take away from what they do. Right. They have their thing, but I guess that's why it felt to me like, oh, this is a nice, and I think it's the last track.
Yeah, I think so.
And I was like, oh, that's cool. You know, it's just a nice break from, okay, there's all that and all this, and then there's this. It was, anyway, I thought it was great.
Yeah. And it was cool. And, you know, God bless Ashley Morgan. Like she really made me sing. I didn't want to sing in that band.
Oh yeah.
I was like, you guys got the vocals covered.
Yeah.
And Ashley is such a vocal arranger at heart that she's like, no, you sing this, you know, and then we started doing this whole 3-part harmony thing. And that became like, you know, the sound, you know, for us. And now I love it.
You're swimming in your head. Think maybe you could use a raft, repeating things you said. Some made you cry and some made you laugh. But if experience is just a word that some folks say, maybe the currents have dragged you, baby, too far away. 'Cause we've all seen rain, we've all shed a tear, we've all felt pain and given in to fear. If you can't break the chains that hold you down, I can't be the one to do it now.
You know, honestly, I've heard things over the years and stuff, but it was fun to have an excuse to just like do the deep dive on Faultlines, awesome. You know, and just like check out the recorded stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. Obviously, a lot of work and just awesome.
Yeah.
Anyway,
thank you.
Not that my opinion matters. It does in this podcast world.
I mean, in LA, opinions. There's certain opinions that you get. Like you get a lot of like general opinions about things, but not often do people tell you to your face exactly how they feel about your work. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
It's great.
So how's that feel?
Yeah, it's so good. I love it. Personally, I can take it. I've heard some horrible things about myself over the years, so I welcome it. You know, it's just like I come from Midwest, you know, where people are like honest and they don't pull any punches. They're just speaking their mind.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, I originally come from New York, so it's you know. And then I grew up in Denver, in West, not really the Midwest, but
right.
And then so I kind of run into the same thing a lot. It's not an honest town.
No.
Or you have to learn the language, I think is what it is, really.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. Yeah. And I know that, for me, I did. And I know I've known a lot of East Coast people throughout the years that are just like a bunch of phonies and like, they can't get with it. And I think that's what it is. It's just learning a language.
Yeah.
Like so many things in life.
Yeah. They'll either just not call you back or, you get the, we're going to go in a different direction.
Yes. Yeah.
No one will ever do like, dude, you really got to work on your shit.
Yeah, right, right.
No one's that. And I was like, okay, yeah, we're going to go over here, but good luck.
Totally.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can I can definitely see merits for like both things, I think I get it. There's a lot of people in LA. They're like, I don't want to crush this guy's dream. He's on his own path. I'm just going to say, hey, we found something different.
Right.
Like, what good is it going to do if I tell him exactly what I think?
Yeah. But it might sort of, like you said, if you don't, there's that, it might prolong your journey a little bit, It might be better if someone just said, dude, you're not ready.
Yep.
Like, work harder,
Absolutely. That's the other side of it. Yeah.
So it's like, it puts the onus on you. I mean, I think really that's the other thing it stems from is like, there's a billion guitar players here and they're all pretty great. So there's not any incentive to develop anybody. So, in my opinion, might cost money or something. You know what I mean? Like
right.
people, they get paid for their opinions or whatever. Like they'll just move on to the next thing because it's there. And you've got to figure out, you've got to be the honest person with yourself.
Yeah.
Which is really hard.
Yep.
For some people.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But especially when you're like trying to find answers to questions you didn't even know mattered.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
Deep thought of the day.
Yeah. Ooh, this is awesome. Well, since we brought it up, you're from Indiana?
Yes.
Is that what I remember?
Yeah, Indiana.
And that's cool. So what brought you out to LA?
Getting away from the Midwest, really. Like I don't know how far back I should go with this story, but like I went to, I did all my schooling in Indiana, including college, which was, when I was 18 years old, I was playing in bands, surprise, surprise. And I was like, I told my parents, like, hey, me and my friends, like, we got this band, like, we're totally going to make it. We're probably going to go to Chicago or something. And they're like, that's great. You can support yourself. That's great. That's cool. You can do that. If you want to stay here, if you want us to help, pay for whatever you're doing, just go to college and, or, you can just go live on your own. And I was like, I'll go to college. Yeah. So we looked around for different schools, and I studied psychology. Naturally, like when I looked into schools for music, it was like classical programs, jazz programs, and I was like no thanks. That's not me at all. Like I'm a rock and roll guy. I'm a natural. And so I did that, and I ended up really loving psychology, because it was that thing. It was like, what are you going to study? And I'm like, I don't know, psychology. Just like it came, that desire came from somewhere, and I'm glad it just kind of trusted my gut. And I was like, the first 2 years of college when I was doing general ed, I was making anywhere from like A's to D's. Like it was just all over the place. And then when I started taking psychology classes, I was so driven, and I found like a part of myself that I think I use in music every day now. And that's just this like driven spirit. And I was like straight A's across the board. I set the curve on like 90% of the tests I was taking in these classes.
Wow.
And just really found my niche and found how to learn and found my love of learning.
Gotcha.
And then like the last year and a half of college, I was like, I want to get a business minor, and have some sort of business background. So I started studying some business classes or doing some business classes. And then right out of college, H&R Block was offering this like tax prep course for like 10 weeks. And my dad was like, hey, why don't we do this together? And I was like, okay, so we did that. Because at that point in time, I was kind of like, I want to explore my business side.
Right. Yeah.
So we took this tax prep class, and then I worked at H&R Block for a tax season, which is just a frenzy of like,
oh my God,
insanity. It was just so, I can't believe that people let me do their taxes. Thankfully, it was like, it's mostly like you're sitting there with a computer program, just, inputting the thing. And all they care about is that they're getting money today, so they can go buy beer or diapers or whatever. I don't know.
Right.
Also during college, the last couple of years, I was, like I said, playing in a couple of bands and doing like frat parties and stuff like that. And so I was like sending out inquiries to, fraternities and bars and stuff like that, and trying to just keep that business going, and to, just continue to play and do that. And was not getting a whole lot of, response or like business. There was some stuff here or there, but like nothing huge, nothing to say like, this is where you should, put all your chips.
Right. Right.
But one of the bands that I was working with, this band called Table Scraps, the singer, Mike, and the bass player, Brian, ended up wanting to move to California with me. So that all evolved as like, Mike was, he was kind of the couch surfing, like hippie guy. And so I'm like, I'm going to ask Mike if he wants to move somewhere, and I'd been reading up. I was a worldly guy, and I decided that the place to be was Phoenix, Arizona. And so I was like, hey, Mike, I got a proposition. You want to go to Phoenix, Arizona, somewhere hip and cool with like cactuses and sand? And so he's like, yeah, that sounds great. And then he calls me back a couple days later. He's like, so I talked to Brian, our bass player, and he wants to move too, but he says LA, not Phoenix. And I was like, LA, Los Angeles, California? And he's like, yeah. I was like, okay. And 2 weeks later, we were in my SUV and we were driving across the country. I'd never even been to California.
That's cool.
So I had a family friend that worked at Capitol Records. And so he would like give me some advice. It all just kind of like worked out and fell into place. And that's how I ended up in California. Was that the original question?
Yes. Yeah. That's a great story, actually. I love it. You're just like, I'm getting in my car and going.
Yeah.
That's a ballsy move.
Yeah. I mean, at that age, you got not much to lose.
Yeah.
And
totally.
Like, this was, I can't imagine doing that now. I was 22 years old and I already had a college degree.
Right.
I don't know that people still do it that way.
Yeah, I think just judging from people I talk to, although I don't talk to a lot of young people, but I do run into them. I think that's still like coming out of Berkeley. Actually, the people that I talk to or the people I interact with kind of do have college degrees. I feel like my next question would be, so you're like a self-taught guitar player?
Yeah. I
think that...
I feel like self-taught's a loaded like label, but yeah. Not formally taught.
Right. Well... Okay, well, explain that. What do you mean?
Okay, so I play viola. I have some family members that are like, they play like brass or, I think it was just maybe brass instruments. And my dad's parents both played keyboards. And my grandfather, my dad's dad, was a band director. And before that, he was kind of traveling with a band. But really I think he had some bad experiences and he swore off like doing like live music. And that's when he became like a band director. And so it was somewhere in my lineage to do that sort of thing. And my dad played cornet in college and was like all-state cornet player, and his brother was too. But after college, like my dad was like an accountant, worked at banks all the time, so he was like, wow, he was just total like business guy. And even now, like he helps me with all my stuff, my taxes and all that. So it really comes in handy.
You don't still use H&R Block?
I don't use H&R Block. Not that there's anything
one of our
wrong
sponsors.
with that.
I just was going to say, no.
Okay, so when I was 11 years old, I had MTV on and I saw a Poison video. I think maybe it was like, I Want Action or no, Talk Dirty to Me.
Nice.
And I was like, oh my God, it's like the heavens opened up and I was like, this is my destiny. And this is coming off the tails of me like completely like giving up my dream of being the next Larry Bird, because I don't know, I don't know how much you know about Indiana and basketball, but it's like every driveway there's a basketball hoop, like it's religion there. So I totally was like sucked into that. And I was like, I thought I was going to be a basketball guy, and then it became very clear when like tryouts happened that like, this was not my thing. So anyways, I saw the Poison video and I was like, this is what I want to do. And my parents are like, okay. And my dad happened to have an acoustic guitar that I don't think he ever learned to play, but he had. And so they're like, okay, here, you can have this and we'll sign you up for lessons at the local music shop. So I was taking lessons, and I'd like, take in my tapes. I remember like in the first couple weeks, I was like, yeah, I want to learn like Dude Looks Like a Lady by Aerosmith and like Talk Dirty to Me and, all this like glam rock stuff. And I'm sitting here with this like piece of crap acoustic guitar, and they're like, okay, let's work on some fundamental stuff. I was like, this is lame. And a couple weeks into it, I was like, I'm done. I told my mom, I was like, that's it. Like, I don't want to do this. Like, this is not what I thought music was.
Right.
And so she's like, well, just stick with it. And they kind of said, if you do this for like 6 months, we'll get you an electric guitar for Christmas. And the next lesson I went in, and it was like, I think it must have been like a decent enough lesson to where I was like, all right, I'll stick with it. So I started playing with, all these different people from school. And I ended up teaching lessons at the local music shop, which I was like probably the worst teacher ever. Like because I didn't really have, I had like a Mel Bay book, like, volume 1. And that was like, and I didn't even get through that.
Right.
I just kind of like did enough to like figure out what I needed to do at the time. And then we had, Guitar for the Practicing Musician and Guitar World. And it was a very, like, when I was coming up, like, that was really like a golden age for like, shredders and like stuff like that. So there's like all these Hot Licks videos and like, all that stuff and like Shrapnel Records, and so I'm, learning as much as I can about all this shredding stuff, So I think that definitely helped with my chops.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, I don't consider myself a shredder by any means, but I think like I would have been a lot worse had I not gone through that phase.
Yeah.
So that was part of it, just little bits and pieces of stuff here and there. And then finally, after I moved to California, I went to MI they had this 1 year guitar performance kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I tested out a quarters 1 and 2, and I went through quarter 3. And I don't know if you've ever been at MI.
No, I've walked through. It's
kind of like you've got classrooms, but it's kind of like a guitar center, but with classrooms. Like there's just people like wanking like everywhere, just random noises, and it's just, you can't really like concentrate and buckle down. They give you your curriculums, and then they have like these extra little classes, and then you go and walk in and, here's Scott Henderson, like, yeah, and here's this diminished triad, and you're just like, wow, like that's crazy, and I just like took in nothing. But like, I did learn from like my classes, like Dave Hill. Do you know that guy?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I used to play with him a lot with Greg Krukas.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So Dave was the class was called like Single String Theory or something like that. I forget. It's a weird sounding name, but like, it's just basically like a basic guitar class. And I learned a lot from his class. And that guy, he was so cool. Like I really love that guy. And like Al Bonham.
I don't know him.
Okay. He was like the country guy. I remember he was like a really cool player and teacher. So anyway, I picked up some stuff there and really like started to figure out how the theory applied to guitar. And not long after that, I really started getting into a lot of cover band stuff. My musical trajectory has been insane. Like, I don't know how, like at first, I don't know if everyone's like this, but like, I didn't know that like sidemen really even existed.
Oh.
That was never my thought. I was like, I'm going to be CeCe DeVille or Richie Sambora,
right?
And I'm going to be, I didn't want to be the John Bon Jovi
band guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I wanted to specifically be the guitar player that sang background vocals.
Gotcha.
Like, and the lead guitar. But I didn't want to be like the front man. And I didn't want to be just a completely background guy.
Right.
So, I came out with that intention, and I ended up like making some friends in California and started playing with their band, like just right off the bat. Like my band, was billed at this illustrious establishment known as the Coconut Teaser.
Oh yeah.
In Hollywood.
Yeah.
We had a prime.
Not there anymore, but,
we had a prime slot. I believe it was midnight on a Tuesday night. And there were these guys.
Oh, that's the greatest spot. That's the spot where like Motley Crue was.
Yeah, that's the thing. No one expects it, but it's really, that's where it's at. So we were just happy to have a gig. And oh my God, we have a gig in Los Angeles, California. It's crazy. Hollywood, in fact. And these other guys were playing early on in the night, like probably like, I don't know, they had like the 8:30 slot or 9 p.m. So there was actually people there watching them.
Right.
And so I'm going around, I had been to Kinko's and I made all these flyers like, hey, stick around for our band Table Scraps. And so I was like going around to tables and like passing them out. You know, I was like, hey, and I'd just be like, and again, this is one of those things where like I was like kicking aside my my shyness. I was just kind of like, I got to do this. You know, I just read this book on like, you know, how to like make it in the music industry. I was like, I got to be like ballsy, you know?
Yeah.
So I was like, stick around for our band. We're going to be on at 12 o'clock. And they're like, 12 o'clock? I was like, yeah, see you then. And so anyway, this band was up and they're playing and they've got these great harmonies and like great songs. And I was like, these guys are amazing. And so they got off stage and I immediately ran up to the guitar player and I was like, dude, I love the way you use that minor 7 chord in this song, blah, blah, blah. You know, just total like guitar shop talk, you know, but like, I was genuinely like, wow. I was like, I was enamored with these guys,
right?
You know, and long story short, their band and their friends stuck around and watched our show. And then they're like, you know, we have a show at Molly Malone's on Friday. And this is the front room of Molly Malone's before they did like the remodel and all that.
Right.
And so we went to their show and then we all hung out afterwards and we became good friends and I started playing with them. And I forget where that was leading. I think it was just basically that I was all about original music. You know, I wasn't thinking about doing cover stuff. Mm-hmm. And then a few years later, and definitely after MI, it was like if I would get like a 40 song set list and I knew like 10 of the songs, it wasn't like, oh my God, this is like insurmountable. It was like, oh, it's just a matter of like, you know, placing the knowledge that I know onto this stuff, you know?
Right.
So I think that, I don't know, the MI thing, the teachings from MI really like allowed me to do that stuff, like the holy cage system.
Right.
And that changed my life. And then from the people I met through those cover bands just led to more and more things.
That's cool.
Like the Mad Tea Party thing.
Well, before that, I met you. The first time I ever met you, I was doing a gig. I did it for 13 years at the House of Blues.
Oh yeah, that's right.
The morning.
Yeah, the History of the Blues.
History of the Blues show that they would bring in. It was like a field trip for kids. So they would bring in kids from school. Yep. And we'd do an hour-long show about the history of the blues.
Yes.
You know, nice and edited for children.
Yeah.
What's a hoochie coochie man, mama? No, and we, you know, a lot of, and you would sub, I think, for Matt, or did you sub for
Gary?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Because Matt Baldoni is the guy that got me on. I don't know if you ever knew him.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. And then he moved to Vegas and Gary took over. Gary was subbing and Gary Melvin, a great friend, played in a lot of my bands and stuff.
Yes.
And then you would sub for him.
Yep.
So I just remember this nice guy coming in and guitar playing was fine. The gig wasn't that, you know, you got to play a little Hendrix. It's like the hardest to get, you know, and it's just, you know, there's like a guy and a girl who talk and then we play music in the middle. It's not, you know, it's not a very hard gig. Right. But then I remember, because I have a good friend, Rudy, who also was the Matt T guy, and he's another episode. So I was familiar with the Mad T thing because he was getting it, and then I feel like I remember you mentioning an audition or whatever, and I was like, "Oh, that's great, you know, cool, you know." Yeah. So how did you get to? So Gary, how did you get to know Gary and get into that gig?
Okay, so I met Gary through Dave. You know Dave Bernal, harmonica player. Okay.
Oh no.
So he's got a band called the Just Dave Band. I think that's still what they're called. And so Gary played in that band, and I met Dave through his roommate Anthony. And actually, Dave and Anthony both they lived at the same apartment complex as me. And Anthony, I think, was friends with another person in my building that I was friends with, and so we got introduced. And so Anthony was a singer-songwriter guy. So I was playing with Anthony. And then eventually at some point, like, you know, Dave asked me if I could do a gig with him or whatever to like fill in. And so that's how I ended up meeting Gary. And I met Matt Baldoni that way too. And actually, Anthony and I had written a song. What was it? The Space Inside My Heart. And so we wanted it to be like a kind of like a Spanish Latin kind of feel. And Dave was like, "Oh, you should meet our friend Matt. Like maybe he could give you guys some pointers on it or whatever." And so Matt came over, and he like, you know, we played the song for him, and then he played it, of course, like 100 times better than I could play it. Like the guy's like, he's a wizard.
Yeah.
So, but he gave us some good ideas, you know, and then we ended up, you know, recording the song or whatever. But that was the first time I met Matt. But yeah, so Gary and I worked together a little bit in the Just Dave band, because sometimes Gary would fill in on bass for Dave Kilner.
Oh,
I don't know if you know him.
That sounds really familiar. Okay. I might have met him. Because then I remember then later I got on the Mad Tea Party. It was all canceled, and then they brought the show back, and and I was drunk at a rehearsal one day and overheard an audition, and I was like, yeah, I'll go audition. You know, let's do it. You know, and with Rudy and Matt Selby was there too.
Yeah,
I should say hungover. I wouldn't show up drunk to a rehearsal. I'm a professional.
Right. Yeah.
But so, and then, you know, a week later I auditioned and I got the gig.
Yeah.
And then I just remember the first show I did with you, or maybe I just saw a show with you. I don't know.
I think we did it overnight. I think I was there for your overnight.
There we go. Yeah. Which is a fascinating, amazing thing. So they literally, like, after the park closes, you go and you do the show, and it's just, that's probably the most amazing time to be at Disneyland.
Yeah, it really is.
You realize how much of a city this is, and like all the people are gone, but people are still, now a whole other crew of people come in and clean the place up and do the whole thing. And but anyway, yeah. And then I see you in this show, and I'm just like, who is this guy? I don't know who this guy is, because it's a high energy. It was a high energy. It's been canceled again,
right?
But it was a super high energy. We're all in spandex and weird outfits and makeup and wigs and stuff, and jumping off things and doing the splits. And I still haven't got my jump into the splits thing down yet, but it was amazing.
Yeah.
And, so how did that come about?
Okay, I had a friend that had a public access TV show.
Oh, wow.
And so I was on there, and I did this scene with this girl, and we had to, like, I don't know how I say this. We had to be really close. And so we kind of bonded, and it was never like a thing. Like we weren't into each other. At least I wasn't into her, but like, you know, we had a mutual admiration of each other. And so like I think we were on a break, or like after the shoot, she's like, "Do you want to go have a drink?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So we went to a bar. I'm talking to her and talking about my musical trajectory, you know, like how I'm going to be famous, of course, the humble guy that I am. And someone overhears me, and she walks up at some point. And she's like, "Hey, I couldn't help but overhear, you know, what you're doing, like you're you know, playing guitar in bands." And like at this point I was kind of looking to do a bit of an original project. And she's like, "I know someone who's basically doing the same things as you, and maybe if you guys met, you guys could help each other out." And I was like, okay. And that's how I met this guy named Mark Latham. So we started working together. We were doing shows together, and we had this huge fan base. Not a fan base, but like kind of a friend base. And one of the guys that would show up was this guy named Ian, and he was a producer. And Ian was just super cool guy. And he would bring me over to his studio, and like we would like record like ideas together and stuff like that. Anyway, and a guy that he worked with was Yogi Lonich. And I was like, that guy's like a legend. Like Yogi had his picture up on Guitar Center in Hollywood. Like it's like Slash, Mark Knopfler or something, and then Yogi, and then like these other Eric Clapton, you know, like this guy's amazing, you know? So I was like, "Can you introduce me to Yogi?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." And so he gave me his number. You know, I think maybe he gave Yogi a heads up that I was going to call him. And I called Yogi, and like, he was like the nicest dude ever. And I was like, "Can I like take lessons from you or something? And he's like, yeah. And so I started taking lessons with Yogi, and kind of back to like, more guitar education, just coming from like different avenues. And then so a few months into it, Yogi calls me and he's like, hey, I have a possible gig for you. Yogi was the sub for someone else in Thomasina's band.
Thomasina's kind of an Orange County legendary rock star.
Yeah.
Works at Disney a lot as well.
Was a Tomorrowland Terrace staple for so long. And then, and then now we've done the Knott's Berry Farm summer nights the last couple of years. But she's amazing, and she does a lot of stuff around Hollywood. But so I filled in with that, and that was one of those things where it was like I had like 2 weeks to learn like 40 songs. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this. So I did it and did the gig. And I was like, I'll probably never see these people again, But I had like, when I was there, had a good time. Everyone I met was super cool, and I was just thankful to have the opportunity. And then, so like, I don't know, 6 months later or something, I was on a gig, one of these bar band gigs. And the drummer on the gig, this guy, Walter Turner III, he was like, hey, there's going to be this new cover band gig at Disney. I think you'd be great for it. It's like top 40 in rock, and it's like, right up your alley. And I was like, cool. Yeah. Send me the info. He's like, all right, cool. And so he sends me this thing, and I'm like, okay, cool. He sent me the info, I'll check it out later. And I go and look at it, and it's like a link to like an open call audition. And I was like, no, screw this, dude. Like, I'm not a good auditioner. Like, this is terrible. And I was talking to my friend Nikki about it. And she's like, oh, you got to go. And so like, she made sure that like, we went down. I was like, it's early in the morning. It's Orange County. Like I can't do this. And she's like, we're getting a hotel room. So she and I got a hotel room. I didn't sleep the entire night, and like, she's fast asleep and like, just like, no cares in the world. And I was just like, oh. But she's so cool. And she and I play together. Like, we actually just did a gig last night. She's the sweetest. She's awesome. But anyway, so she forced me to go to that audition. So the next morning I get up and I do this audition, and I'm in the line. There's like 200 people in this line. Like, everyone just like, the sound of like plinking guitars, the unamplified, it's just, it's kind of got a beautiful thing all on its own. What a cacophony. All right. So anyway, and they're all doing like, most of them are doing Sir Duke, because that was the audition.
Gotcha.
There was that, and like the Lenny Kravitz version of American Woman. I think they wanted us to like, they wanted to know that we could modulate when we go into the guitar solo, because there's like this modulation. And so I'm looking up towards the room, and like, because people are coming in and out every now and then. One of the guys that goes out of the room and grabs like a power strip or something and goes back into the other room, I was like, that looks like Matt Waldron. And Matt Waldron was the guy who basically gave me all my materials for the Thomasina gig. And when I say materials, this was like literally like he gave me like 6 DVDs of like live performance. It's not like now where you're just hey, I'll send you a link.
Right. Yeah. No, I know.
So I was like, I think that was Matt. Mm-hmm. And then, he goes back in there, and I forget all about it. And then I walk into the audition, and the backing band is Thomasina's band.
Yes.
And they're like, Todd. I was like, what's up? And so it was like, I think that gave me a very distinct edge.
Right.
Then I was super excited, and just, I think they were looking for people that were high energy. And I was just like, yeah. And they loved me. And they're like, we only have one question. I was like, what's that? And they're like, do you have any brothers? Like, we want more of you. I was like, wow, thank you. Like, I was flabbergasted. I was blown away, and then I didn't hear anything for like a week. And I was like, well, I guess that was just a bunch of smoke, But, then I ended up getting the call. And, and it was
kind of me too. It was like the call came probably 4 days later than I thought it was gonna, and I was like, oh well, I didn't get it.
Yeah.
And then they're like, I'm like, I had already adjusted to not having this gig.
Yeah, right. And I didn't know too at that point. Like, I was like, I thought that they were just picking one person.
Right.
Right. Maybe I would have been a little more hopeful if I would have realized, oh, they're looking to like have like 4 of every instrument. Yeah.
Which
is puts your odds exponentially better.
Right. I don't work at H&R Block or anything, but I think I'm not good at math, but and just in terms of you brought up kind of being an introvert and shy and working on that.
Yeah.
Like this had to be the ultimate exercise in.
Oh yeah.
Because it's, for me, like I was a stand in one place, smooth jazz R&B guy, you know, but you just couldn't be that on this show.
Right.
Like I remember in my audition, I don't remember the director's name. I don't remember his name, but he was like, okay, now we're going to do Sweet Child of Mine again, but pretend like you're the lead singer. Like pretend it's your band. You know?
Oh, wow.
So I'm like, okay, you know, and just go up front and do all the things. And that's what it was like. Every song, every set, every show, you know, like a big, huge, which in a goofy outfit, it wasn't me either, but man, that even to the, you know, now I'm doing this Chicago gig and it's like, it's a big deal. Like it's a high energy show. We don't wear makeup and outfits, but the skills that I learned in that show, I use every night now, you know?
Yeah.
And, so
same, like, there's so much stuff I learned and from the people that I performed with too, but also from Robin, who maybe that's who you're thinking of.
That's right.
He like just so many like cool fundamental things. Like, you know, if someone's doing something and you're, you know, give them a little bit of focus, but don't turn your back to the audience, you know, just kind of like share the focus or whatever. And just basic things, you know, and I think it was like find your light, you know, and like, you know, when it's your moment, step forward and make it your moment. Yeah. The particular squad that I played with every Sunday night was like just go-getters, you know, like George.
George, bass player.
He is a machine. And like he does, like he's got every single second choreographed. He's like an NSYNC concert in that way. It's like, so I had to keep up with this guy. And it's so funny. It's so weird how quickly you can figure out how to work around it. And I think that's how I got placed with the people that I got placed with. It's because we were like, for some reason, we just kind of gelled in the way that we moved. Like if George would move one way, I would know intuitively to go the other way, to get out of his way, to find my own thing. You know, we just kind of all staggered ourselves like in a way that probably looked like, oh my God, these guys are filling up the whole stage, but they're not just standing there. They're moving, but they're, you know, and it's interesting.
And it doesn't seem contrived.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing about George too. It's choreographed, but it's great.
Yeah.
You know, like if you didn't know it, you'd be like, wow, you know, if you didn't.
Right.
Plus, you know, it's a Disney show. So it's weird. Maybe it isn't, but it's weird that there are so many locals that go see it every day. But I'm sure when they were putting together the show, it was like, you know, you have a family that's going to come here. They're going to see the show twice and you know, never see it again or whatever. You know? But George he's so in it.
Oh yeah.
That it doesn't seem contrived.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And Nathan was the same way. So it was, I had no choice but to keep up with those guys.
Yeah.
You know, and it was great. Cause before then it was like, I don't know if I really even had a wireless system. Right. Like maybe I had experimented with it a little bit and I would like walk around awkwardly, you know, and then now you got to dance and you got to run around and like the playing is definitely like secondary, you know, it's all about, I mean, you better not mess up when you're playing, but you better not be thinking about it either.
Exactly. Yeah. It also was, you know, heavily fortified with tracks. So as long as you didn't mess up like during a solo or something, you know, I did feel that like after a while, I'm like, I care so much less about the music than I do about the show. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which, you know, which doesn't mean I was screwing up, I guess, but I was a little more sloppier than I would be on a normal show just because it wasn't about that. You know, it's going to sound fine. Just get out there and work the crowd.
Exactly. Yeah.
Pretty crazy.
So much of a performance.
And did you enjoy working for Disney? I mean, it's interesting coming not from, well, obviously bar bands and whatever, but like it's a corporate setting. You at this point have been an accountant.
Yeah, right.
That's what was odd. You know, not odd necessarily, but like interesting to me because it made me start thinking about like, well, what if I just got a day job in a corporate thing with a Disney type, you know, this is a fun company.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
And you're getting paid. It's a union gig. You know, it's very strict rules about stuff. And
one of my favorite parts is that I could walk in with nothing but like my, you know, just take my wallet.
Yeah.
And that's it, because everything was provided. Like, that's beautiful. If only they would have changed the strings for me, that would have been good. But I love that aspect. And the aspect of, like, you know, when you're rehearsing, it's like 45-15. It's like, you got these union breaks, because believe me, like, I've been on these things where, like, people are just like in the zone. They go for like, you know, 3 hours. You're like, I gotta pee. Like, I gotta eat. I have needs. I'm a human being. So I loved doing the Disney corporate stuff in that capacity. You know, it was like, and I feel like we got treated differently than a lot of different employees. You know, as entertainers, you're kind of like first class citizens, I feel like.
And we were like the rock people.
So, we were different. We were edgy.
Technically, you're not even allowed to go in if you've got a little stubble.
Right.
But they'd be like, oh, you're in Mad Tea. Okay, whatever.
Well, I did have to. So, like, when I first started, I had like a little bit of highlight in my hair. And so I went through, I forget, some part of the onboarding process, and they went to take my photo for the ID. And they're like, oh, we can't take your photo today. I'm like, why? You just point and click? Like, it's not hard. They're like,
I'm here, you're here.
You have highlights in your hair. I'm like, yeah. And they're like, it has to be one color. I'm like, oh, geez. So I had to go and like, had to get my hair did and then come back to take my ID. So that part was kind of lame. And I remember hearing a story about Rudy, like they pulled him out of line because he had like a goatee or something. And they're like, you need to shave right now. And he's like, I'm out of here.
He like called Matt Selby and was like, nah, I'm not doing it, dude. He's like, just tell him you're with Mad T, you know, like, don't freak out, man. We need you.
So funny.
Yeah, I mean, I have tattoos here, so I would have to wear. I would have to wear a shirt that cover the tattoos so that I could go and then put on 2 sleeves full of fake tattoos to do the show. Like,
ridiculous.
Okay, that's.
Yeah, I remember George. I think George had a tattoo on like his hand, and he would always have to wear like a Band-Aid on his hand.
You're in the army now.
Yeah, totally.
I'm a dive bar rock star.
How would you like to hang out and talk about music? Or discuss something you've heard on the podcast? How about learning some new techniques on the bass? Do you have a new song and would like some feedback from an experienced and professional songwriter? You can do all of that and more at golive.ly. I'm offering private bass lessons and songwriting feedback in a private setting over Zoom. Just search for me, Eric Baines, at golive.ly, pick a date and time, and schedule a lesson. It's that easy. I can teach you advanced bass techniques, music theory, improvisation, or we can talk about how to prepare for a gig, the best thing to wear to an audition, or the most important things to know about living on a tour bus. If you have a new song that isn't quite working and you need some feedback from someone who's written and co-written hundreds of songs for artists, TV, film, and video games, I can help you with that too. All skill levels are welcome. Search for Eric Baines at golive.ly, golive.ly, and I can't wait to meet you. I'd like to take a second and thank you for listening to the Dive Bar Rockstar podcast. Getting the word out is a vital part of what it takes to keep this show on the road, and the easiest way to help is to subscribe wherever you listen, and if you have an extra minute or two, please leave a review. You can also follow our page on Facebook, which is the Dive Bar Rockstar Podcast, or follow me on Instagram at Dive Bar Rockstar. Okay, enough begging. I hope you're having a great time, and once again, thank you for listening. And you played Knott's Berry Farm, and there is kind of a whole circuit of because Universal, I know some of the musicians played over there too, and a circuit of like amusement park gigs, right, that pay okay and like can keep you sustained, right? Like,
there's a lot, and I was definitely not aware of that sort of thing until like I got into it, and then I worked up right after Mad T closed. They were doing auditions for the Six Flags Magic Mountain gig up in Santa Clarita. Right. And so a few of us went up into that. Actually, John and Ashley and I think we ended up auditioning together. And like, obviously we had all this cohesion. They're like, you're hired. You know? So we ended up working there for, like a summer, maybe 2 summers. But like, it didn't have some of the perks that Disney has, so it was kind of like, I don't know if this is a sustainable thing, you know, but it was fun and it helped ease the pain of, you know, the Disney gig ending.
Right.
And then Knott's Berry Farm was totally cool. Yeah, so many gigs. Many gigs.
I know you work every day. Like it's a pretty amazing work ethic, I think, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's I think I definitely have a work ethic instilled in me from my dad.
Yeah,
because he was always a hardworking guy, like not the slacker type at all.
Right.
You know, just always like, no matter how you feel, going into work, you know, just like.
I think that's a generation too. We're probably close to the same age. I don't know if you want to say your age.
Yeah. Oh, I'm 22. Yeah.
Excellent. Perfect. But my dad was kind of the same way. I said for many years, I don't know if I ever said it to him, so if he's listening there. But it was like my dad, even after I'm like 10 years in and pretty successful, if I complain about, you know, having a slow month, he'd be like, well, it's probably time to start thinking about a day job now.
Oh, you know, yeah. Like, one of those.
Probably you got to get a job.
Yeah.
But so maybe that's a generational thing, but it's definitely affected me and the way that I've approached this as a business versus just, hey man, let's just play and get drunk, you know?
Yeah.
No, this is going to be my life, and I need to make the best of it, both financially and, you know, and I want to be happy. But then sometimes along the way, those don't always line up.
Right.
You know?
No.
Because I think the last time I saw you, we were kind of talking about this, was at the Fox and Hounds in Studio City. You were playing there, and I walked in, I think it was like a duo thing.
Probably with
a drummer.
Matt Olson.
Yeah, and I sat in on a couple tunes or whatever. And that was, I don't know, that was probably 4 years ago.
Yeah.
I used to play there like every Friday with a group called the Jägermeisters.
Nice.
And definitely, I would call. It made me start thinking maybe I should do a show about what exactly a dive bar, what is required to be considered a dive bar. But I would say, like, if you walk in and it smells like, you know, vomit and beer, then that's got to be one of them. And that's definitely just the smell of that place just makes me want to party. I don't know.
I love it. It just makes me want to party.
It's hard for me it's a dangerous place for me to go because I spent so many nights there just drinking and having a ball that I can't not just line up the Jaegers. Let's go.
Right. You know? Yeah. I don't know how you do that, by the way. I've never I had a really bad experience with Jaeger one time. Yeah. And like before that, I would never even touch the stuff. But like I had a friend that was like, hey, have this, blah, blah, blah. And I don't want to get too graphic, but I almost Jimi Hendrixed myself.
Yeah.
So it was.
Well, what I usually say to that is like, it takes practice. Don't just jump in. You know, you got to ease into it.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like work it out.
Yeah. You know, because that's the other thing about, you know, in that period of my life, I don't know if I could do it anymore. Like, you know, and now like I have a kid and I'm just exhausted all the time. So I just, you know, now if I get up to 3 glasses of wine, then I'm partying.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
But back then, I remember they eventually put us on a $150 bar tab. And one night we finished it before we even started playing. Like it was crazy. But
that sounds right.
Yeah. But what I would say at that time too is like you can't just play drunk. You got to practice drunk.
Yes.
You know, it takes a while.
There you
like
go.
It's a different thing. And then you get to the point where there were songs like Ramble On. Like I couldn't do it too early in the night because if I was sober, I don't even remember how to play it. Like it's awesome. So in my hands that I just like I got to be to a certain point of inebriation. Or I overthink it and I mess it all up.
State dependent learning. Psychology, baby.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Well, it's funny that you brought that up. I remember that so distinctly about meeting you at the House of Blues, and I probably gave you crap about it because the obvious joke is like, oh, that must come in handy with these musicians, but it kind of does. Like it sounds like it.
I think it can. I mean, I don't know how everyone else uses it. I mean, for me, like learning stuff about psychology was mostly about learning about myself and learning that all the weird things, all the weird thoughts that I had, like all the doubts and insecurities. The main thing was everyone goes through that, you know? So like that, I think that really helps. And that gives you kind of an edge to realize that, you know, you may think you're totally weird and messed up, but believe me, everyone else is too, you know? And then from there, you can kind of just, you know, you see people for a little bit more for who they are, like everyone's like got their demons and they got their angels and like they just, and everything in between. And you can kind of approach them as a human being and not just like be in your head about yourself.
Right. Yeah. That's amazing. Because you can identify certain traits because you've been trained to.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say that I was that deep into it, but like, I mean, yes, you could do that, but I was never good at being that type of, you have narcissistic personality disorder. And you have this and that. You have, right. Like it was just, I don't know, the DSM-3 was just a handbook, and you look in it every now and then, but it's like, you just basically like, yep, that guy's got issues, and like, everyone needs compassion, Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Well, you're in the right town. It seems to be a compassioned place as well.
I think it is. A bunch of bleeding heart liberals around here.
Right.
But it is, it's a beautiful thing, which is very, kind of different from where I came from. But I feel like I did come from a town where people were compassionate, but just in a different kind of way.
Right.
But I mean, you find your people, you resonate with certain people and you find these people. And I feel like I've been so lucky to meet the people that I have over the years, and like the advice that I've been given, like gently and gracefully, somewhere that fine line between the East Coast, like kind of telling you like it is, and like the California, like not telling you anything. I've been able to find some people that really I feel like have kind of gently led me into, greener pastures over the years. Yeah. So, which is hard. I mean, Midwest kid coming from out there, just out to the great big city. It's just, I don't know. It's crazy.
It's crazy for sure. I feel the same kind of way, really. I was this like bright-eyed guy from Denver, and just everything's so cool. And you have to, that's the thing about the shyness that you brought up too. It's like you have to get out there. You have to put yourself in front of people. You have to talk to people. You have to, and it's not fun for me. Like, and when I first got here, and I've said it on this show a million times, but like I had a demo, which is another episode. You can go listen to it. And I was just like 4 clubs a night, just going out every night and just handing it to everybody. And, and sometimes you're just like, like vacuum cleaner salesman. And but it's like, I would just be like, just show up. You don't even have to talk to anybody. Just be in the room, because sometimes stuff will happen and people talk to you or like, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, it's a struggle if you're not naturally that way. Well, I wanted to talk about the members only Yacht Club record. Yes. Because I checked that out too. So cool. It's so fun. During the pandemic, the first thing I did was, I don't know, Taxi. Have you heard of Taxi?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So there was a listing for Yacht Rock. So I wrote a bunch of Yacht Rock tunes, and just, sent them off to a guy, and he bought them essentially. So
dude, that's awesome.
I wouldn't be releasing it because he's got all the publishing, but it's fun stuff, and that record sounds just so perfectly aimed, and it landed exactly where you were aiming, I think.
That's great.
So did you write that stuff?
Yeah. So we had let's see, we had a gig booked in early 2020 with our Yacht Rock band. So this is a band, these guys in this band, like we do all kinds of stuff. We started as an 80s band, and then we did like a corporate suits and ties gig.
And you're doing covers.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And so when the lockdown happened, we were like, all right, so we got 2 weeks, where we can like regroup here. And, this gig coming up in a month, it might get postponed like by a week or two. I don't know. Like, let's just talk about it. So we ended up getting on a Zoom meeting. And so I think it was like near the tail end of the meeting, I was kind of getting bored. I was like, picked up my guitar. I'm like fumbling around. And I was playing this little idea. And then I thought back to how I was like learning piano, and I had kind of stumbled on some stuff that kind of sounded like yacht rocky, but not intentionally, like just kind of like me playing the wrong chords because I'm just learning.
Those are called polychords.
Yes, exactly, polychords. And so I remember coming up with the idea, and then I was just kind of thinking, I was like, does anyone want to like work on some songs together? In the meantime, for the next couple of weeks while the world sorts itself out. And then, in April we'll be back and jamming, everything will be safe and sound, just like they said on TV.
Right.
So the singer, Alistair, was like, yeah, like send me what you got. And so I had this like little keyboard thing, which ended up being called Sarah's Back in Town. So I wrote this little keyboard part, and I sent it over to him, and like definitely like within like a day, he sent me back the thing with like lyrics and everything. I was like, okay, like this is cool. And so I built it out more, and we ended up doing a whole song. And like I was just kind of exploring different things about things that people do in music. And I think like there's like a couple of modulations in there, and then
and by the way, Sarah, like the most yacht rock name, you know, such a name out of the you know, Sarah Smile, and
that's
Sarah by
Jefferson Starship,
I think they were
Airplane
Starship at that point.
Airplane, private jet, whatever it is. Alistair's thing with that first song, he's like, what if we do, because we had a Hall & Oates band, and so we've done that a couple of times too, which is, if you look at the pictures, they're pretty hilarious. And it's funny because Alistair and I think I might be a little bit taller than him, and Oates is definitely not taller than Hall. And so in the pictures, we had to like arrange ourselves like in such a way, and I would kind of like spread my legs so like I'm shorter.
Right.
But the pictures are hilarious. If anyone wants to look at those and make fun of me,
I'll post a link.
Oh my God, please. So anyway, his idea was like, oh, hey, maybe we make this like a Hall & Oates style, like, project, you know, and this song, Sarah's Back in Town, would be like a response to Sarah Smile.
Right.
You know, like, okay, like I was kind of like, okay, you know, and so, but it just, as I think the greatest things do, it just kind of took on a life of its own.
Right.
And then so before you know it, like I was sending him musical ideas, and he would send me like, you know, vocal lines, like the verse and the chorus, like it within a day, like every time, like just like boom, boom, boom. Like that guy's got a work ethic too. Like, I mean, oh my God.
And that's Alistair
Tober.
Yeah. And he like owns the agency.
Yes.
Yeah, he's called me several times, and it just never has worked out. And now he moved to Vegas, I heard, right?
Nashville.
Nashville.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Got you. Yeah. Super nice guy on the phone. And the
he's
drummer, singing that stuff?
Oh, yeah. He's the singer.
The vocals are impressive.
Right? Yeah.
The vocals are killer.
Yeah. He's an awesome, talented guy.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And Ryan Brown plays drums.
Wow. Yeah. From Denver.
Yeah. And then he was sending me musical ideas. So I have some hilarious demos of like stuff that he would record on his like Casio sounding keyboard, and like just
cool.
You know, and I was like, all right, I pull up my my Logic drummer and like some other plugins I had, and just kind of build out these songs. And so the two of us, like within, I don't know, probably within like 2.5 months or something, we had 10 songs, like all fully built out. And so then we decided to have our actual players do everything. Like Adam Bravo played keyboards, Mad T Guy, and Ryan Brown recorded the drums, and then Mike Hill played the bass,
Mad T Guy,
and
also another episode of this podcast.
And Jenny Kidd sang vocals on a song too, on a song called "Let Me Down." But yeah, and it was just amazing. Like it's such an amazing process. Like, and it had been so long since I actually like, you know, recorded and wrote original music, you know, and I just, for me, the whole thing was just like, no matter what it becomes, just don't say no, just like keep going with it, you know, just like kind of a yes and process, you know, and Alistair was the same way with it. And I think that's the only way we did it. It's like, I feel like if you keep going with that philosophy, you'll be like, I don't find no's. I find like just better yeses, you know, and then just that becomes the thing. And at the end of the day, it's like you just put a button on it and you're like, okay, that's the end of that one. You know, let's move on.
Right.
You know, so then now when we go back to play the songs live, it's like, oh, I got to learn this now. Because it was all, you know, just spur of the moment, kind of like, you know, I'd go running or something and I'd have an idea and I'd go back into my room and like lay down this thing, you know, and it was cool that we had the time to do that. And he hooked up with this guy in Nashville named Jim Frazier, who works with Messina from Loggins and Messina.
Oh, wow.
And he works with a lot of other people too, like super talented guy, like guitar player, keyboard guy, and producer, obviously. And so that's where Alistair was recording his vocals.
Oh, wow.
And the guy was like, hey, like, do you need a mixing engineer? And Alistair was like, no, I think we got somebody who can do it. And he's like, well, let me take a crack at it. And so he did it and he sent it to us. And we're all like, yeah, that's the guy. He gets it. Like he just had a thing about it. And he was like, it was so great. Because if there was anything musical, he knew. Like there's a lot of recording engineers, I think, out there that like maybe wouldn't necessarily know, you know, and it's like, he would be like, oh, like the sharp 5 on this, like is it just it's just rubbing with the vocal and like, you know, like he can like get nerdy about stuff. Right. But yet he still has a big picture vantage point too. Right. So he was awesome. So yeah, Jim Frazier. That's amazing.
Well, it sounds super great.
Thank you.
You know, again, like right up, it landed, you know, it's a yacht
awesome
rock record, you know.
Well, that's what a lot of people that we've played it for, they're like, it sounds like that era, but like, not like you're pandering to the era, not like it's not cheesy at all. It's like, it's just like,
they're good songs.
Cool. It's honest, you know? Right. And it was just, I don't know. It's amazing that it happened that way. And it was all from like, I don't know, like just letting go, not being too intentional about it. Just like, this sounds cool. What do you think? You know, here's this.
That's cool.
It was a beautiful process. So beautiful.
It's so beautiful, man.
I'm not sure if you even remember my name. I'm not sure if you want to love again. I'm not sure if you even feel the same. All I know is what's going round, that Sarah's back in town. I hear you're back in town.
Howl at the Moon. Do you remember that place?
Yeah. Oh,
Universal City Walk.
Yeah.
So I remember at least one particular time I went there, and this is, there's a little intersection of a couple of different things that happened there. So I definitely remember going there on a Saturday night one time and seeing the band, and they would have Howl at the Moon, Dueling Pianos Bar at Universal City Walk, mainly 2 piano people who they would switch out, you know, people would take breaks. And the cool thing too was that like if someone would request a song that they didn't already know, someone would go back in the back hallway and learn that song, and they would come back and they would do the song.
Gotcha.
Like amazing stuff. And then the band would follow along. You know, they're like, okay, here we go. I'm like, this is the cool. Like, I mean, at the time, I don't know how it would go off now. But at the time, like it was like the coolest thing ever, especially to me. I was like, this is a dream gig. Like, this is amazing. I would love to do this.
Wow.
And then one of the times when I was there, I saw CC DeVille. Which,
no way.
Yeah. Which also, that is not the first time I've run into CC DeVille.
Wow.
I remember this is my idol, right? This is the guy that like, this is why I started playing guitar.
Right.
And outside of like Huey Lewis and the News, like Poison was like my band.
Right.
So I had run into him at Norm's Guitars, like probably 6 months after moving to LA. And like, I just bright-eyed guy, you know, just like, I want to do, I can do anything. Like, I was like, is that CC DeVille over there? Like, yeah. And I'm like, can I talk to him? And they're like, sure. You know, it's just like this employee at Norm's. He's like, I don't know. Can you? You know, so I walk up to him and I'm like, you're CC DeVille. And he's like, yes. And I'm like, has anyone ever told you that you're the reason why I started playing guitar? And he's like, no one has ever told me that I'm the reason why you started playing guitar. and it just went over my head. But I was like, it's so good to meet you, sir. I was like, can I jam with you? I mean, who would ask? I would never ask someone that now. Wow. You know, but I think he saw that like I had no agenda. Like I was, you know, just enamored, just like, this is my hero. Like, and so we picked up some guitars on the wall. He's like, what do you want to play? And I was like, every rose has its thorn. And he's like, all right. And so I sang, and then I was like, play it, CC. And he like played a solo. I mean, like the nerve of me. Wow. But it was all honest, and just like I was, oh my God, it was like the greatest moment of my life. So anyway, flash forward, I see him again at Universal Studios. I saw him at the, I think I saw him at the Coconut Teaser, the Martini Lounge. Do you remember that place?
Yeah.
So I saw him many times, and we had given him a keychain of our band. And like, there was one time I saw him, I was like, CC, do you remember me? I met you in North Carolina. He's like, oh yeah, the keychain. I still got the keychain. I was like, oh my God, CC remembers me. Anyway, so Howl at the Moon. Then flash forward years later, I have this buddy, Gene, who I met through Dave Schultz. Gene is a keyboard guy from Miami. And he would go down. He's like, hey, they have this open mic night every Tuesday at Howl at the Moon. He's like, do you want to go with me? I'm like, sure. Yeah. He's like, I'm going to play some songs and stuff because I think I'm going to audition for the band. I was like, cool, man. Yeah, let's go. So we would go, and they would have guitars on the walls, and they had amplifiers there, you know. And one night, like, there was no one there playing guitar. And they wanted to do a song. I don't even remember what it was, but they're like, it was kind of a guitar heavy song, you know. And there's like, does anyone know this song? And I was like, I do. And so I walked up there, I played this song, and then someone else came up and wanted to sing another song. And it was like something that like not even the keyboard players knew, but it was something stupid. I think it was like No Rain by like Blind Melon or something. And I was like, oh, I know that one. And so I played that one. And then the next one came, and I was like, oh yeah, I know that one. And it was like Slumdog Millionaire. It's like, I learned this song. I remember I was in the garage, like at John's house, and I learned this song. And then, oh, I was at school when I learned this song, and blah, blah, blah. And it just like, it was just I don't know. It was a weird happenstance of this thing. Anyway, I ended up getting a call, and I ended up being in that band. Wow. Because they needed someone like that weekend to like fill in on like Friday and Saturday. So for a couple of years I played there, and I met Val Chaikin there.
The tea person.
Yeah. And then this girl, Nikki, that I was talking about earlier, she was a cocktail waitress, working as a waitress in a cocktail bar. So like, she was like the shot girl, but she's an amazing singer, and she would come up and they would feature her, and she would sing a couple songs every now and then. But it's just so weird how like all these things kind of come together, and like, especially, I don't know if it's something in the water or the energy, but like, I feel like stuff like that happens in LA, you know?
Oh yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. But, well, yeah, I was going to mention that earlier. I can't remember what specifically we were talking about, but it's like, well, no, it was you being overheard talking at a bar.
Yeah.
Led to lots of gigs, you know? And like, that's, you know, the reason you move to, you know, I say that on this show a lot too, because like there's not a lot of towns where the phone can ring at any moment and change your life.
Oh yeah, right.
Or you can run into somebody on the street and change your life.
Yeah,
you know, there's kind of 3 towns, you know.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
And this is definitely one of them.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
Yeah, and the thing about that Howl at the Moon gig was like, that was where I really learned to like use my ears. It was like that was the whole gig, you know. It was like, They don't even tell you what song they're playing. They're like, they just go, and it's like you know, you either sink or swim. Yeah, swim or sink.
Right. Yeah, I came up through the bars. You know, like that was really. In fact, when I moved here, I was going to ask you about this too, because when I moved here, I had also been doing like weddings and stuff before I got here, but the intensity of it here is so different than Denver. Like, you know,
I'm
you're
sure.
up there with. I mean, you've done West Coast gigs, like. You can be on the bandstand with really amazing session dudes, and like the stress level, the pressure can be amazing at just a stupid wedding. You know? Yeah. So when I first moved here, I'm like, God, I'd just much rather spend 3 or 4 nights at a bar doing 4 hours than play this one Saturday gig that's going to pay the same. You know, just because the pressure is less. I love being in the bars, and like, and I know how to do that. You know what I mean? Is that something you prefer as well, or is like you still enjoy?
I would say, because I don't like wearing dress shoes. I think that's like the main thing that I have. But like, I have a great time playing with wedding bands, because usually the players are like the best caliber, you know, that I've come across. Like, these guys are just like killing it. And so it's so cool, because you'll have like these great session dudes. You're like, I can't believe I'm playing with this guy right now. Yeah, you know. Yeah. And we're all getting treated like crap by the player.
I know, it's a humbling experience.
It really is. So I mean, it says a lot about a person to be able to do you know, to like go on the road with someone and do a gig where you're treated like a god and then just be treated like, you know, a vendor the next weekend. But I think you got to have that, you know, because your main love is always, I mean, for me, it's just like this path of like, you know, mastery and just, you know, happiness with where I'm at and like with the people that I'm surrounded by. And just, you know, flowers and rainbows and yada, yada, yada.
But you are a hippie.
But I think my favorite, I really am. But I think probably my favorite kind of gig to do is like a house party. One where they're like, come in, eat and drink as much as you want. I'm like, yes, I will. They're like, and play. I'm like, oh yeah, of course. Yeah, we'll play too. You know, because they're in your face. It's like, it reminds me of like an old frat party where like, you're not on a stage. Like you're right there on the same level with everybody. And it's a metaphor for just the way that it is. Like you're in the party, you're there, you feel like a guest, but also like a rock star at the same time. You know, it's just a great feeling and people are expressive. Whereas at the weddings, I think, and rightfully so, like they're a little distracted by other things, you know?
For sure. Yeah.
Which is fine. And, you know, and some people do get into it. There are moments in wedding band gigs where like, you know, the crowd is totally lit and everything's going off, you know, but like there is a lot of that, like, you know, we are wallpaper, you know, those kind of moments.
Yeah. So how many songs do you think you know?
Well, you know, my iPad tells me that I have like close to 3,400 songs in there, but I have no idea. I don't know.
Because that's the key thing about, you know, the bars and the weddings, really. Although I read most of the time on the weddings now, but but the vocabulary is pretty intense.
I do know that I don't have to look at my iPad quite as much as I used to. And there's a lot of times when I can like, you know, predict what's going to happen in a song that I've never heard. So like, it's a big difference even from like, really, I started doing weddings in probably around the same time as Mad T, because that's when I got hooked up with some different wedding band agencies through the people that I met there. And I remember, well, and also, I mean, here's like, I back to Yogi, you know, I went to see him play with, I think Randy Cook was on drums. And I forget who else was on the gig, but he was like, hey, come up and play a song. And I was like, I don't know what to play. He's like, play Superstition. I was like, I don't know that one. Now I look back, I'm like, well, I didn't know Superstition. Like I couldn't just whip that out. Like what's wrong with me? But really like, I just, it wasn't my thing. Like it was like, I knew specific songs. And I wasn't in that vein. And then now it's like, like I show up to these gigs and like most of the times I don't need charts. Like I know all the like the standard fare tunes. And I love that. And some people like really hate like, oh my God, I have to play Don't Stop Believing, and they get offended by it. You know, and it's just like, I don't care. If people are having a good time, to me, it's all about the vibe. I can be playing the worst song in the world, but if people are loving it, like that's what it's all about. You know, let's play the chicken dance again. I don't care. You know?
I do have limits, but I'm basically the same way, especially when you're talking about certain songs that like Don't Stop Believing, which completely overplayed now, like every night, everything, but it's great. Like it's a great song. You know? Like it's still there's like a reason. It still takes me back to my childhood every time I do it. You know, and you're just like, oh yeah, man. Like the, you know, or Living on a Prayer, you know, and anyways, if I never had to play like Brick House into Play That Funky Music again, I do have my limits, you know what I mean? But I will, like you said, if that's what it takes. I know I used to tell a story before, you know, then now I played 5 years with Dwight Yoakam and I'm kind of, I don't know, I have some country stuff, you know what I mean? But I hated country for a long time. When I was a kid and I was in Denver, and one time we played this bar out in the middle of nowhere, and it was like all these cowboys showed up, and I was never
Sounds like the Blues Brothers.
Exactly.
So we played Rawhide, and they loved it.
And I was never more happy to know a couple of country songs in that moment. And then they made sense. It was all great, you know what I mean? Awesome. And, you know, I have an appreciation for country music for sure, but, you know, when you're a kid and you just want to be Toto. You know, you don't want to play country music. Or if you want to be in Poison, you know, you don't want to play. You grow older and you're like, oh wow, this takes a different type of skill. You know, this is a thing, you know, this is amazing and great songs and whatever. But
and great sonic textures. That's the thing that I love. Like especially like what we do in Faultlines now, it's kind of morphed into this like Americana thing.
Right.
So it's I just love the sound. Like there's nothing like a Telecaster with a capo on like the 5th fret, you know, with an acoustic guitar in the background. It's just, I don't know, it's just beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, you know what? You are beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
And I really appreciate you coming and talking to me. And I've taken up a ton of your time. And
it's been awesome.
But it's I just one last thing. I do remember. So we did the Mad T thing, and then that turned into this band called Hiatus. I think like Danny sort of put all the, and you guys would do Halloween shows. And of which I did one, but then there were like 3 weeks in a row with different cast members, and I went to another one where you were playing, and I think it was like the Metallica tune, but I watched you take a solo, and I was just like, oh, you can do that. Like, you know, you're awesome. So much more of a well-rounded, and maybe it was just the time that had passed or whatever, but I'm just saying like, you're an underrated guitar player in this town, and
thank you.
You know, I can bear witness, and it's a pleasure talking to you, and I'm so glad that you're still here and doing good, and you survived the pandemic, and
oh my God,
we're all here doing it, and we you know, we should work together. We should write a song or something. We should write another yacht rock tune.
I know, right? Combined forces will be the Voltron of yacht rock.
Yeah, man, we're taking over the world.
Or the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers now for this.
Oh, nice. All right. Well, thanks for coming, man.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
What a great guy. I must say, he's just he's a joy to work with, and just a force for positivity. You know, it's really refreshing to work with a guy like that. I especially loved when he said he didn't know that sidemen even existed, because I remember having that realization as well, you know, earlier in my career, obviously. And I think that's a key thing to making a living as a musician versus being like an artist or trying to make it, quote unquote, as a band, you know, like getting signed and all that. The sideman thing, which is mostly what this show is about right now, is more about doing a job, getting paid, and going home. And, you know, as dark as the music business may seem, there's still a lot of this type of work that you can do and make a comfortable living, you know, if you're in the right market. You got to be kind of in a town that has a lot of demand for this work and enough so that the pay is good. You know, the going market rate for a sideman is something you can live with, but it is possible for sure. And I think Todd is just a great example of that. So if you're just learning this lesson, you know, like let it give you hope that making a living playing music is absolutely possible. The cage system is a system for playing notes up and down the guitar fretboard by memorizing fingering positions for the specific chords C, A, G, E, and D, because they essentially just keep repeating. Yogi Lonich is the guitar player or former guitar player for Buckcherry, the Wallflowers, and Fuel. The DSM-3 is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, and it's very hard to say. Jenny Kidd is also a Mad T person and a phenomenal singer. I seem to miss that label as we were going. And I mentioned West Coast gigs, and we've probably talked about that before, but that's short for West Coast Music, which is a big wedding band agency in LA that a lot of the guests on this podcast have worked for or currently work for. Well, I hope you enjoyed the show, and I hope you have a great holiday, whichever one it is that you celebrate, and we'll see you next year. Wow, you've made it to the end. I'm hoping it's because you completely enjoyed yourself and are now filled with knowledge and inspiration to move forward with your dreams. If that is the case and you would like to stay informed of new episodes, live events, and general news, please go to divebarrockstar.com and sign up for the mailing list. If you have any questions, comments, corrections, or complaints about anything you hear on the show, please email me at fanmail@divebarrockstar.com, and you may even end up on the show. We at the Dive Bar Rockstar podcast, with all of our hearts, thank you for listening, and remember, it's all about dreams.